New Zealand is into their first ever World Cup final. They're playing at home, one of the co-hosts, and they've really lived up to their potential. Remember, they were one of the most in-form teams leading into the World Cup. Their batsmen, bowlers were in good form, and they've actually come true to that momentum, carrying that through the group stage. Now 2 knockout games, and they're into their first ever World Cup final. Disappointing for South Africa. Heartbreak once again. They've lost their 4th semi-final in a World Cup now. And you could see there on their faces, but perhaps they only have themselves to blame because the key moments in the match slipped through their hands. That Behardin-Jumini collision, perhaps a repeat of the Klusener-Donald moment in 1999. The chokers tag still firmly on their head. Saurav Ganguly, Nasser Hussain, Boria Majumdar, Andrew Simons and Nikhil Chopra with us on this special broadcast. Let's talk about New Zealand as we were doing. Saurav, big moment for them. They've been a very consistent team throughout the World Cup. They've been unbeaten. A very, very good bowling attack. Their batsmen are firing. What's the mindset with which they'll go into the final now?
Oh, of course, Shivani, a huge moment for them. Any side which chases almost 300 and gets into a World Cup final, you have to really give credit to them, not just the ability, but the mental strength. 298 at break, everyone in the commentary box was saying that it's South Africa's game. But the knock from McCullum, the knock from Corey Anderson, the knock from Grant Elliott, under pressure. Imagine that partnership from Corey Anderson and Grant Elliott under pressure. It was remarkable. Yeah. Remarkable to watch in a World Cup final how 2 players kept cool and kept batting. So they deserve all the praise. They've won every game in the World Cup to the final. They're probably the best team in the tournament so far, along with India, and they've got one step ahead to getting to the finals ahead of India. They've been just outstanding. What stands out for me is they were home team. There was pressure. The stands were just full of Kiwi supporters. It was an unbelievable atmosphere in Auckland, and to bat second and get 298 and get to a World Cup final is just remarkable. Hats off to them. Hats off to the squad. And now they get on to Melbourne in different conditions, and hopefully they'll enjoy the next couple of days till they get on their mind to the final, whoever comes on the 29th at the MCG.
Yes, they can take maybe a few hours and just enjoy this moment. They have a few days to go to the final. But we've been talking about this, how this team has a lot of belief that this World Cup title could be theirs. Sort of, you are in Auckland. You were calling this match in the commentary box as well. What do you see and feel around you as far as the home side is concerned, the home fans are concerned?
Well, they're related, Shivani. It was a packed stand. Every seat was full, every box was full. And when Grant Elliott hit that 6, they just jumped out of their chairs, enjoy. I was with the Australian boys, Hussey, Julian, Alan Border, who was sitting next to me, and they were back in South Africa. Julian in the last over said it's too much. But, the Kiwi guys just hold on to their nerves. It's not a very big ground at Eden Park, Auckland. So 10, 12 in an over is not a difficult target, but under pressure, last over, connect that hit and hit it over the long on boundary speaks volumes of the character showed by the Kiwis. They're not just in a World Cup final because of ability or because of their home conditions. I think that team has a lot of resolve, a lot of mental strength, and they've been through a remarkable patch of one-day cricket.
And that comes from Captain McCullum himself, isn't it, Nasser? You're a big fan of his captaincy, and that is making such a huge difference to this Kiwi side. It's looking completely different than the ones we've seen in the past.
It is. I think he's a very driven person. Obviously, the World Cup being or co-hosted in New Zealand, I think the whole country in New Zealand has really woken to cricket and this tournament, and he feels the whole country's behind him, and I think they are enjoying his brand and style of captaincy and cricket. It's going to be difficult for him, obviously, coming over here to Australia, coming to the MCG, bigger ground, different atmosphere, hostile atmosphere, away from home. They've not played a single game away from home, but what he has done so far in the tournament has been outstanding.
Right, Andrew, you've talked about how, when you played New Zealand for Australia, you did target that mental fragility perhaps in the Kiwi side. They hadn't done so well at the big stage and they had so much talent over the years. Do you think that weight is off their shoulders now? When they go into this final, they're not going to feel, like the underdogs anymore. They're going to go there saying, okay, this is ours for the taking.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think they do really have that belief now. You talk about, I was talking earlier about the quality of their side. They've got quality bowling and quality batting, and they've got experience as well. You know, you look at McCullum and Vittori, the amount of cricket they've played, and still playing very well. And then you've got the young blood in Bolt, and that Southey's played quite a lot of cricket
and
now.
Matt Henry in his debut match,
yes,
isn't it? Debut World Cup.
Yeah. So there's a good mixture there, and you know that win today will have done them an amazing sort of amount of relief and belief.
Yeah.
They'll be very competitive again in the final. They're a sort of team that doesn't lay down. They keep coming until they're all done. So it'll be very interesting to see how they go in the final.
Boria, if I remember correctly, you were wanting South Africa to win, isn't it? You were with Saurav, hoping that this would be their year, provided India wasn't in the final. With that caveat, disappointed with their show today?
See, South obviously disappointed, but you know, I would dare say I wouldn't mind a new world champion. I mean, India, being an Indian supporter, obviously India, but I wouldn't mind a New Zealand. I mean, this sport needs a new world champion, Shivani. Let it grow. And the way the Kiwi fans backed their team tonight, I thought was wonderful. That's what sport is all about. You know, with 6 runs to go, 2 balls, they showed a glimpse of the fans and they were chanting Kiwis, Kiwis. That's what you want to see from sport, isn't it? That's the passion. And I did not see that in the South African ranks tonight. I mean, you could see Shane Bond even smiling, trying to egg his players on. For me, New Zealand has been outstanding. Yes, I'm disappointed for South Africa. The chokers tag will continue to haunt them for God knows how many number of years. For New Zealand, they were perennial semi-finalists, but now to go that one step forward as co-hosts, I think they've now done it. They will now feel. And you asked Andrew about underdogs. I think they will go in as slight underdogs because they're coming to Australia, and I don't think that's a problem. To go into that final as perhaps underdogs in the MCG, I don't think that's a problem. They will play free cricket under Brendan McCullum, and they will give it their all. So I wouldn't mind a new world champion.
Absolutely. New Zealand really, I mean, they've brought together their campaign so beautifully. Nasir, Trent Bolt has been such a weapon for them, isn't it? I mean, it's this man who's, been such a big factor for them in all of their matches. And that makes this side stand out, the bowling of Bolt and together with Saudi.
Yeah, absolutely, especially when the ball swings, and it has swung around in New Zealand. And again, that's what he's going to have to work on. Maybe at the MCG, the ball hasn't swung around as much, so he's going to have to work on that. But the left arm angle, the way he pitches it up, the way he uses the Yorker, the full delivery, and then the short delivery. I know he went round for a few, but at Auckland, on that postage stamp of a ground, a lot of people are going to go around the park. But he has been one of the top 3 bowlers of the tournament, without a doubt.
Right, we're going to talk about India, Australia very soon. Of course, the winner of that match is going to meet New Zealand in the final, and either way, there's going to be a big match at the MCG. But before we slip into a break, Saurav, how do you think South African cricket is going to react to this loss? I mean, we could see their players breaking down after the end of this match. Obviously, a big loss for them, huge heartbreak for them. And you've been, they would perhaps be critical of their performance themselves, knowing how bad they were perhaps in the last few overs especially. How do you think they're going to pick up the pieces now?
Well, I think they will obviously go away and go home, and I'm sure they'll have some time off before most of the players break off to play the IPL. Time heals everything, and time will heal obviously this worries for South Africa, because they're a good side. Once the home bilateral series start, Test cricket starts, they'll obviously get back to winning ways. And when you start winning, you feel good. But they have to really sort themselves out if they have to be world champions. You know, it's not just been 1 World Cup, 2 World Cups. You know, since 1992, it's 23 years now, and how many? 4 or 5 World Cups since then, and they've got to the semi-finals and lost, got to the quarter-finals and lost. New Zealand beat them last year in Dhaka in the quarter-finals. Australia beat them in 1999 at Edgbaston. 2007, Sri Lanka beat them in the semi-final. They just turn up in semi-finals and get beaten. So it's not just their cricket. They just have to find a way to get their minds right. They had a barrage of people in the dressing room, and I don't know whether you need so many people in a cricket team. When you look at the South African support staff, there were about 7 or 8 coaches. Mike Hussey, a very dear friend, was popping out of the commentary box. giving them advice and getting back into the commentary box again. So, just unimaginable the number of people they had in that squad. And it's not about their ability, it's not about their cricket. It's something wrong in the mind, and something cannot be wrong for such a long period. It's 23 years, 5 or 6 World Cups, and you keep losing semi-finals. I don't know what's the solution.
Defending champions versus 4-time champions, really couldn't be more dead even than this one, and perhaps as close a game on our cards as the one in the first semi-final. But let me first go across to Boria Majumdar in Sydney. Boria, it rained today in Sydney. What are the conditions like, and how is that likely to affect the Sydney pitch?
It poured today, it did not rain. It was pouring, cats and dogs. In fact, it stopped for the last 45 minutes. But from the morning, it just poured. Practically for about 7-8 hours. And it's cold now. It's genuinely breezy and cold. But tomorrow and day after, on the day of the game, it's supposed to be bright and sunny and clear. I was having a chat with a number of people at the ground today. The conditions, and Nasser has seen that pitch, and what he says is it will be a good batting deck. Perhaps not the amount of grass that the Australians wanted, but also not the kind of dry track that the Indians want. There will be pace and bounce, it will be a good batting deck, but it's been a lot of rain all day today. So who knows? I mean, tomorrow, day after, you can't change a pitch in 48 hours, though Aaron Finch says you can. Having said that, it will be one cracker of a contest. For me, the high point of tonight was the close game. Quarterfinals were rubbish. The semi-final was a humdinger of a contest, and that's what I want to see in Sydney.
Yeah, Saurabh, we can definitely expect a repeat of this, isn't it? I mean, that's our hope. Fingers crossed. The first semi-final has lived up to the expectations, 2 evenly matched sides. And the second one, even more so, India-Australia with the rivalry in the summer as well.
Oh yeah, they're 2 top teams. They're brilliant one-day sides. Australia have got the firepower. India have been outstanding in this World Cup. India, the reigning champions in 2011. So it's going to be another terrific game as we saw tonight against South Africa. I don't think any of those sides will go down under pressure like the South Africans have did, because they are the sides who won World Cups and know how to win World Cups. So it's going to be a fantastic game. I can't wait to board onto the flight to Sydney. As Boria said, it's rained and everyone's eyes will be on that pitch, and I don't think anybody can pass a judgment on that pitch till actually that covers are on. What's underneath that covers, nobody knows. If the ball turns in Sydney, Australia will find it very hard to beat India. But if it's a good wicket, then it's a 50-50 game.
Yeah, and at least what the indications are by what Boria is saying, it could be a good batting deck. That will even things up, isn't it, Andrew, if it's a good batting deck? What India, and not too green atop, which would favour perhaps Australia more, although Indian paces have done well too. Yeah,
I don't think there's going to be enough rain for it to go green. It may change the way the ball bounces. The wicket, if it gets a bit damp, it might be slower and it might spin. But I think the wicket's going to be good. They'll have it well and truly under cover. Wicket will sweat a bit though, because if it's been under the covers all day. But it'll be good. I don't have any doubts that there'll be a quality surface there, and a quality surface means an even contest.
Who do you think has the edge over, between the two?
As I've said throughout, I think Australia strike power through Mitchell Starc early is danger for India. If they get through that, then India can attack our fifth bowler in Maxwell, and then vice versa. I think Australia needs to bat well early, not lose wickets, so we can attack Ashwin in the middle and towards the end and try and prevent him from taking wickets. They, for me, seem to be the two sort of key battles that may take place.
Apart from the match against Pakistan and South Africa, Nikhil, and maybe a portion of the West Indies match, which I was watching from the ground as well, where India could have been in a spot of bother or was in a spot of bother, India hasn't faced a very big, consistent, threatening bowling attack, and this could be their first big test, since South Africa at least.
Well, that's true. But I guess to counter that, Shivani, I think the good thing is that most of the Indian batsmen are amongst runs, and confidence makes a big difference. You know, Shikhar Dhawan's got a couple of hundreds to his name. Virat Kohli in the initial game has done well. Rahane played a blinder of an innings against South Africa's quality bowling, and that was that 79 or 80 odd that he got, game changing. So you've got guys who've got runs and they're very confident at this moment in time. You look at Suresh Raina, you know, Mahendra Singh Dhoni's got runs as well. I can understand where obviously Andrew Simons is coming from. Stark's going to be the key. Mitchell Johnson is not in the best of form,
yeah.
you know, in the entire duration of the World Cup. But if you lose a couple of wickets, even somebody like a Mitchell Johnson can come and trouble you, where somebody can come back and put a lot of pressure on him if you don't lose wickets in the first 8 or 10 overs. I think that'll be the key. That's been the classic mantra for most of the sides in this World Cup. Handle the new ball with amount of care. You know, your targets around the 40th over should be about close to 200, and then the wickets in hand in the last 10, you can go all guns blazing.
Absolutely. Saurabh, as we've been talking, very little to separate the two teams, but would you say the Dhoni versus Clark battle, if we take that as a mini battle of the captains, that's where India has a big edge over Clark with Dhoni on our side?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Dhoni has won world titles, 2011 World Cup. Dhoni has won the 2007 World T20 and even the Champions Trophy in 2013. But with all due respect, Clark hasn't captained Australia before in a World Cup other than this one. You know, it was the era of Ricky Ponting till 2011. They won it in 2003, 2007, 2011, where Ricky Ponting was the captain. But obviously, Clark was a part of the side. 2007 World Cup T20, Ricky Ponting was captain. So it's difficult for Michael to judge Michael Clark on the basis of his captaincy in a World Cup because he hasn't done it. He's fresh. He's been part of World Cup winning teams. On the other hand, MS Dhoni has a remarkable record in big tournaments, winning 3 of them, the Champions Trophy and the T20 and the 2011 World Cup. But this is going to be a terrific game. Shivani, I was hearing Nikhil speak about the Australian bowling attack. The good thing about this Australian bowling attack is they've got 5 seamers who can bowl at any stages of the game. And a number of times you hold back your main bowlers for the death. You have a Steyn bowling in the first 10, in the power play, and then again in the last 10. So there is pressure on Dale Steyn as we saw today. There is pressure on Moni Morkel as we saw today. But when you look at this Australian attack, you see the last game against Pakistan, they kept getting wickets up front. They finished Mitchell Johnson in the 32nd, 33rd over, and they had Watson and Faulkner bowling at the death. So not many sides in world cricket has that liberty. For me, the biggest challenge for Australia will be to play freely under pressure. And it's a big game in a semi-final in Sydney at home. It was as much as a big game for New Zealand tonight.
Yeah.
But the expectations on a New Zealand side and an expectations on an Australian side are a lot different. So for me, that's the challenge for Australia, which they will have to find a way to solve. On paper, both the sides are superb. India have been in outstanding form. Australia have played well in this tournament, only beaten by New Zealand. So there's not much to choose between those two sides. It's how Australia handle the pressure will differentiate whether they go on or they finish in the semi-finals.
Yes, the numbers are stacked against India, though. We were playing those statistics head-to-head for India-Australia. You know, overall, in Australia, at Sydney, in World Cups, Australia has had the upper hand. But as they also accepted, this is a much different side than the one they faced 3 months ago. Final comments. Let me go across to Boria. Very quickly, Boria, what are you hearing from the Indian camp? Anything of significance? Confident going into this match or a little nervous?
They are confident, Shivani. They practiced yesterday. They will practice tomorrow. The Australians practiced 2 consecutive days. They are training tomorrow also. I mean, I had a chance to sort of speak to a couple of Australian players. They are equally confident. Somehow this Australian side will not succumb under pressure. They are not South Africa. So it will be a cracker of a contest. I think Australia have their nose ahead with James Faulkner batting at number 8. Sydney, yes, it will be 70% blue, but Australia is prepared for that. It will be a humdinger of a contest. I want to be proved wrong, but I think Australia's ahead.
Andrew, very quickly, do you think the fan support will make a difference in this one? Australia playing at home but accepting that they could well feel like the away team because of the contingent of the Indian fans that's travelling?
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be a huge factor, I think, because when you're playing in Sydney, the crowd, they know their cricket well, and if they've got a stadium that's 3/4 full of Indian support, it'll create a completely unusual atmosphere for the Australians. So
yes, I think Saurabh wants to come in here. Saurabh, go ahead. Very quickly, we have 30 seconds left.
I just want to say, I've been hearing the two teams for the last couple of days. Indians have been remarkably quiet. And the Australians have obviously made some statements. Michael Clark in his Twitter asking fans to support, Warner on his Twitter asking fans to support, Maxwell reminding India that they've not beaten us in the last 3 months. So we've been watching this closely. The Indians have been remarkably quiet and the Australians have made quite a few statements. So I hope not that the pressure is in Australia. And I don't agree with Boria. We don't need a new world champion if India qualifies for the final. If India qualifies, we want India to be the world champions. If India doesn't, I don't mind a new world champion.
I said that.
Right.
I said that, Saurav, but you will not hear anything from India because this Indian side doesn't believe in talking to the media. So that's something that you will not get from
All
them.
right.
However much Australians speak, unless it's the pre-match press conference, you will not get from India.
Saurav is getting to Sydney very, very soon, and Boria and Saurav can, pick their bones with each other about whether they need a new world champion or not. Saurav, Nasir, Boria, Andrew and Nikhil, thanks a lot for joining us. That's all we could pack in. Of course, it's all a big build-up to the India versus Australia semi-final now, and headlines today is the place to watch. Goodbye for now.